Okay, guys, take two here. This is just a walkthrough. Uh, Sometimes it's so easy to just talk about things and let the emotions out, and it's not generally who I am. The other night was a rough night, you know, losing a family member that I didn't really know, and then talking to other people in the family going through so many medical issues that I talk about on the website and in my videos. It just sometimes the pressure just gets more than I can handle, and sometimes it gets the best of me. But those are the struggles that always lead me back to looking a year or two down the road, finishing, not finishing, but building the structure is the most important thing that I can really be doing right now. I would love to, have nothing but recipes on the website to help people out. But I want those recipes to be perfect, to be completely nailed down. That anybody, medical conditions or not, would eat and be like, this is really good. So, and I also have other issues going on that I don't generally discuss or talk about with anybody. I've got a buttload of stuff that my dad left behind after he passed. And with my physical limitations, I don't really have the energy to deal with all of that. Well, I've been thinking a lot about this, for the last few weeks, building the guild on the website and all of the different ways that disabled, elderly, retired, physically limited people could do things that they normally wouldn't have thought about doing in the past. That's a big, I don't know how to say that, that's a big undertaking. It's like climbing Mount Everest in trying to build all of this structure, because I'm going to have to do videos. I really haven't had any luck, working with anybody or finding people to work with. So I'm up for the challenge, I guess you could say, because I just keep getting more and more ideas. And the more people I talk with, the more ideas I have for down the road. And these last few days, since that last video, I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, especially with the spice mixes. But being I've been crashed, being we've had really crappy weather that I've been stressed out from, I mean, tornadoes and hail and windstorms and all this other crap, it sucked the energy out of me. So all I could really do was think about stuff for the last few days. I got back to thinking about my other lot out in King Lake. And what I could do with that down the road, because I physically can't do anything with it. On the other hand, and then we've got the problem in Fremont that's like Fremont won't even allow people to have a greenhouse in their backyard to grow their own food. To me, I think it's a something that needs to change down the road. But for now, all I can do is deal with what I can deal with. That's changing those kind of regulations is going to take something like the Guild, enough people in enough cities and states across the country to say, hey, we want to be able to build a greenhouse in our backyard. So I don't like to dwell on the negative stuff. I'm not the person that gets a flat tire and then beats the crap out of my car because I got a flat tire. I just pull the tire, put the spare on, take the tire in, get it fixed, pull the nail, etc. So instead of just sitting there and dwelling on everything and feeling sorry for myself, I got back to thinking about the greenhouse option and how this can be such a huge thing for people down the road as things get worse. So here's kind of what I was thinking about. So my dad left me probably 130 used tires, all the way from like 13 to 20 inch rim sizes. And I've thought about this, what am I supposed to do with that? We have a tire recycling program that happens once a year. And I think they take 100 tires at a time. So I'd still be left another 20 or 30 tires. And that's a lot of work to try to load 100 tires onto a trailer and then get it out to the recycling program and have to unload all the tires. I'd have to pay somebody to do that. I've been working on this idea for plastic tubes to go inside of the tires, because another option of being physically limited is being able to do a garden. Just the amount of work, the amount of soil, the amount of wheelbarrows and heavy equipment that you might need to do something like that. And I gardened enough before I crashed to understand that plants need their space. And I don't want to grow, 300 crops. I want to be focused on the things I would generally use: tomatoes, peppers, garlic, onion, cilantro, herbs, all the stuff that could be dehydrated. There's so much waste that goes on in mass-produced items. I always think about that, the transportation, the waste, the bug issues, when you're growing plants right on top of each other, you have to use chemicals on all of it. Well, if you were to build greenhouses the way that I'm looking at doing right now, using the old tires as grow bed, it automatically gives you space between the plants. And, you can vary the height, how many tires to get to that point for a shorter plant that you can easily work at. So you're not, you're not using up a crap ton of soil and fertilizer. Everything is in that 13 to 17 or 20 inch planter that might be 3 foot deep, might be 2 foot deep, might be 4 foot deep. Ugh. This is so big. It's so hard to describe, but I'm looking long term for how people can do this. And the cool thing is, this is going to be hopefully a whole video series down the road of And maybe I can find some sponsors to work with for doing something totally off grid, but I've got to figure out how to do each phase of it, let's say. And it gave me so much hope to think about how many people this could help and how many people could get a little bit of their previous life back and feel important. AI is going to be, over the next 3 to 5 years, I think AI is probably going to really change the scene of how things are done. And we're going to have office workers and fast food workers that don't have a skill or trade to share or find a regular job. I think this is a great way for people to take control of their own lives and their own futures, make the communities better places. So it kind of boils down to how, because one of the constraints is always money. And here's doing the math, and just from past experience, I think someone could do like a 20 by 30 greenhouse if they had the space and, they could do it legally where they live. Maybe this would be something that apartment complexes would agree to and work with. But I think someone could do a 20 by 30 nowadays with current prices for about $1,000. And that would include everything, the soil, you can get the tires for free, the EMT PVC conduit for the hoops, the wood needed for it, insulation to go in on the north side especially. I think you could do it for $1,000, maybe a little bit less. But the cool part is the amount of people that you could pull in to work on these projects and create specialist jobs for each person. Like someone with a decent sized dining room table, or somebody that could do it on the floor with a couple of cardboard boxes, could make the tubes to go inside of the tires so the soil stays in the tubes, not the tires, because you don't want that stuff leaching into the vegetables and herbs. That's a super easy project. A 4-foot piece of 4-foot roll of greenhouse plastic and some greenhouse plastic tape and a pair of scissors and a cardboard box or two that you can lay out flat on the ground and, measure out the diameter for a 13, 15, 17, 20 inch, and you could just make those tubes in different sizes. You could wait around until you had orders for them and just make them per order. And that would be a great starting point for someone. Maybe $150 worth of plastic and tape. Could, you'd have to do the math yourself, which down the road I'll be doing the math because I'm going to be doing this all myself. But what a great way for, younger kids to start a business. It'd be something that would be easily shippable. You can pack up an entire order in a used Amazon box that you got the tape and roll of plastic in, kind of thing. there's so many different aspects to this, though, which to me, it's about that positivity, that mechanics, fixer, problem solver mentality I usually deal with, that I try to base everything in my life on. Tires, for example. So easy to find used tires. And it would help so many people out. So if you had just a truck, don't need a trailer for it in most cases. It would, if you had a big enough project, let's put it that way, that would be great. It's a great way to reuse stuff that would just go to the landfill. It saves on soil and irrigation because, each one of those tubes is going to contain the plant that you're growing instead of having to lay out 100 feet by 3 feet of fresh soil and fertilizer. If you had a truck and a couple of, maybe $200 worth of hand tools, an impact driver, and screwdriver, and drill, PVC, you can cut the PVC with like a $15 PVC ratcheting cutter. You don't need a saw for it. You could get started very, very affordably. Let's put it that way. And even a 20 by 30, yes, it would be great to have 2 people build something that size, but it's not needed. I've built all of my greenhouses on my own over the years, and you can do it by yourself. If you're doing smaller ones, let's say a 10 by 16 or a 10 by 12, those are super easy for people to do themselves. Then you have the aspect of seed starting. Maybe you don't have the energy to do the garden, the grow beds, but you could have a small shelf system with a couple of grow lights, and you could start seeds for 5 or 6 people in your area. It goes on and on. It goes back to, I think it's hugelkultur, where you use a lot of wood chips and branches and leaves in the bottom of your bed, and then you put your potting soil on top of that, and then you use wood mulch on top of the soil to keep the moisture in. But you bring in night crawlers and all the good bacteria and everything else that makes plants really healthy. That's really hard to do in a open plot garden. You could layer the very bottom of the tires with cardboard that would deteriorate over time. Those are all things that, let's say, people that can't work regular jobs could possibly do. Which is, this whole model that I'm trying to build around all of this just keeps opening up more and more doors. Then you get into the irrigation part of it. Someone could specialize in that in a city and just go around and work on the irrigation for 10 or 15 people. You've got garden managers that, don't need to be in the garden 24/7, but they could go out if they had the energy and hit up 5 or 10 gardens a day or every other day. Then get into the actual dehydrating part. The garden manager might harvest everything, bring it over, drop it off, and then somebody has a couple of dehydrators and they go through and cut things up, get them in the dehydrator, and dehydrate them for a couple of days. Then you have the packaging aspect of it. All of the people that have the dehydrators could take their stuff to the packager who could put it all together, package it as, 2-pound bags of oregano, vacuum seal them, and ship them. Or you could have one person that just does the vacuum sealing and somebody else that does the shipping. It's so crazy an idea. I know. I just feel that this is the direction that we need to go. To me, it's the only thing that really makes sense. Giving people that don't have the strength or energy, whatever, to work a regular 9-to-5 job. We're cutting. Here's one of the things that I think I didn't mention yet is that by doing something like this, we're not going to make 1 or 2 people millionaires or billionaires, but we would cut so much waste out of the whole food supply system. And this isn't for people that want, fresh tomatoes on their sandwiches. This is a completely different idea, and you could still do that in your area. Sell fresh tomatoes, sell fresh onions, but keep it local. Keep it in your neighborhood, and if you can't get rid of what you produce in the summer and spring and fall, you would have, instead of spending money on farmers markets, instead of spending the time, the transportation, etc. If you stay home and dehydrate that same amount of produce, it's going to be worth more money in the long run. You wouldn't have had to waste any of your time back and forth, setting up the stand, marketing, advertising, etc. No gas costs, etc. Man, I'm saying etc. a lot tonight. But there's no waste. If all you have is a farmer's market, let's say you have 3 pounds of tomato and you only sell 2. Well, what if you have another 2 pounds of products that aren't that pretty, that, maybe a cracked pepper or a cracked tomato from overwatering? What do you do with it? Well, some people, give it to their chickens and it doesn't go to waste, but majority of the time, that stuff just gets discarded. This might be something that we could even look into grocery stores down the road. If they have stuff that they would just generally throw away, maybe it could be something salvageable that could be dehydrated. I'd rather see this, from personal local gardens where you actually know, there's no fertilizer, there's no pesticides or chemicals. Just another option possible to talk about in the future. So that's the thing. I felt kind of bad about being negative the other night and letting things get to me, which I try really hard not to let happen. The only reason I posted that was because I want people to see that I'm not, I'm not a machine. I'm a broken battery for sure, but I'm not a machine. I still have emotions and feelings and a lot of stuff that I deal with. The biggest part which I touched on earlier, is the income ladder. You don't need $1,000 greenhouse to get started. You could start out with just ordering bulk supplies and a vacuum sealer at home. So what else do I need to talk about? I think that's about everything. Just that I just wanted to do this update and let people know that there's hard times. Please don't give up. If you feel like there isn't something that you can do and that you're, stuck in a chair or stuck in bed, there are still things that you can do. There is still hope. Just having those conversations with people about what's going on, and you could be working with me if you were, let's take a worst case scenario. You're stuck in bed, okay? You could be working with me on recipes. So instead of me having to take the time to figure out the spice mixes and other stuff, someone out there, for example, could be working on a pizza crust recipe, and they could do what I do and go through all of the different options and learn, what works, what doesn't, by watching other people do it. You could send me a message and be like, hey, Trev, I know you're working on a new pizza crust recipe. Have you thought about this? Yeah, thought about it, tried it, didn't work. I have so many recipes. It's unlimited. Right now, I think I've got 300 bouncing around in my head for down the road with just the basics. Anyways, if you guys want to share, like and subscribe, please pass this. All of this information is important, and it's only going to get more and more important down the road. Nobody else is building this. I say it in every one of my videos almost. So somebody has to. If you guys can go over, check out the grainfreeme.com website. Check out the rest of the videos. I know they're rough, and I'm still working on all of this. Anyways, that's it. That's all I wanted to say. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and hopefully next video I'll have something a bit more interesting to share, talk, and discuss. Take care, guys. Signing out from Fremont and grainfreeme.com.